Hello to everyone. It is a great pleasure for me to welcome all of you to this webinar on higher education leadership practices and leaders for a sustainable future, organized jointly by the International Association of Universities and UNICA. I'm Luciano Saso, I'm the president of UNICA, and I will mention a few words about this association, and then I will leave to Ilike van Lent, the Secretary General of IAU, to introduce the other association. UNICA is an association of 55 universities based in 38 capital cities in Europe. Europe intended not only as European Union, but in a geographical sense. So we do have several countries represented in UNICA not belonging to the European Union. And I think that this is very important, especially for the topic that we're going to debate today. UNICA is very much engaged, on the theme of sustainable development. We have a strong working group called UNICA Green and SDGs, in which, periodically we debate and discuss about different issues related to sustainable development. And it is important to mention that this working group was created about 10 years ago because the students of UNICA in a conference really requested that. They said, to the leadership of UNICA, we want to be more engaged on this issue. We want the leadership of UNICA to do more for sustainable development. Now, that was a time in which the topic in Europe was debated a little bit less than today. So we are very proud of having taken that challenge, a few years ago. And today we do have a very, really interesting panel with different voices from Europe and from other countries outside Europe to discuss about how the leadership of universities can engage to try to identify solutions for sustainable development. We really think that this is necessary for university to have this strong engagement and to have a strong partnership for these goals. So I would like to thank very much all the panelists for having accepted our invitation. I would like to thank very much Ilike van Lent, the Secretary General of IAU, for this partnership with UNICA, and also very much Isabel Thuman from IAU and Vicky Xonka from UNICA, from the administration, for having worked so hard for the organization of this webinar. And I wish to all of you a very pleasant and very fruitful webinar.
Thank you, Luciano. This is really a great joy to being in this webinar together, to organize it together today. The International Association of Universities is indeed very pleased to partner with UNICA on this very important topic of higher education leadership practices and leaders for a sustainable future, a topic that has gained a lot of momentum recently. The IAU, in a nutshell, is a global association bringing universities from around the world together to work on key issues pertaining to the development of the higher education that serves the society at large. We connect universities from all over the world. 650 of them are a member of the IAU, and so are 30 university associations from the 5 different continents. And we're very pleased to have the members here also in our session today to be able to work more in depth on this topic of leadership today. The IAU was called into life by UNESCO, and we signed the IAU Constitution in 1950, thus marking 70 years of international higher education cooperation just this year. We've been celebrating this important anniversary since 9 December 2020, and the festivities will continue until December this year. All along the year, also to adapt to the COVID-19 and the pandemic situation and the impacts it has had on higher education, we have initiated a series of webinars on the future of higher education. Yes, to look at the impact of COVID-19 on higher education today, obviously, but also to already look into the future together and see where this will all lead us and how will higher education contribute to rebuilding post-COVID, and what are the topics that are high on the agenda of the leaders of higher education all around the world. So it's a great pleasure to work with the universities in capital cities in Europe and with universities from around the world, and in particular here in this webinar from Colombia and from Canada. And so those are from outside of Europe, and the University of Helsinki and Cyprus inside of Europe. So it's really a connecting exercise that we each and every time undertake, like UNICA does, and we're very pleased to bring this esteemed group of speakers together to debate the important topics that are those of how does a university engage with sustainable development from all along the way since the adoption of the Brundtland report back in the early 90s, and more recently since the adoption of Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. University has stepped up their action in many, many different ways, and it will be fascinating to listen to the presentations prepared by our esteemed speakers. So I will start by giving the floor to Sandra Guarin, who is the Director International Relations at the Universidad Antonio Nariño in Colombia, and who will talk about the comprehensive model that has been developed at the university and how that actually triggers new modes of delivery, new connection internally, and also with the higher education community outside in the country and way beyond. And we know Sandra for years and has been involved in many of these connecting points. And I think even that the picture behind you that we now know from many different other webinars is actually a symbol of that, this reaching out and bringing together. So I would like to give you the floor. And I think, is it you who's sharing your presentation, or is it Isabel Thoman?
It's Isabel.
Yes, Isabel.
Thank you. I will put it up now.
So to you for a colorful, very dynamic presentation. We will get back to that in the Q&A later. So please, people, do use the Q&A Q&R section on the Zoom webinar to ask questions right from the start. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Hilish, for this great presentation. Well, good morning, good afternoon to all colleagues around the world. Thanks to IAU and UNICA for organizing this webinar. Well, I will present a perspective from the Universidad Antonio Nariño, UAN 1 in Spanish, so I will refer as one in Colombia. And specifically, I will present a perspective on the action of universities in the SDGs from the point of view of the International Office. Next slide, please. Okay, the one is a private, comprehensive, and secular university founded 45 years ago with the mission to democratize knowledge by expanding higher education access and inclusion. The university is multi-campus with campuses in 26 cities in Colombia. And according to the country's socioeconomic classification, more than 93% of one's student population belongs to low-income families. 54% of the students are female and 46% are male. We have more than 600 students who are part of a Colombian ethnic minority in the country, indigenous people and Afro-descent mainly. Next slide, please. Well, one has been very dynamic in its international relations. In 2018, one joined the IAU Global Cluster, Higher Education and Research for Sustainable Development, which has decisive in different ways. First, the participation in the cluster motivated the development of the one comprehensive model for Agenda 2030, based on the whole institution approach. The model has 6 pillars of action that complement and intersect. First, learning and teaching. Second, research, technology, innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship. Third, partnerships. Fourth, internationalization. 5, social leadership. And 6, awareness as a cross-cutting pillar. Each pillar contributes to different SDGs and has its indicators, actions, and responsible units. The indicators have been defined taking 2 external references. the guide How to Evaluate the SDGs in Universities of the Spanish Network for Sustainable Development, the indicators proposed by the Times Higher Education, plus indicators that respond to the national context and one priorities. In the cluster, one leads SDG 2, Zero Hunger, with 3 satellite universities: University of Oslo in Norway, Kaunas University of Technology in Lithuania, and Universidad Federal de Ouro Preto in Brazil. The universities, the 4 universities together, developed in 2020 the Ending Hunger, a worldwide challenge webinar series, which was attended by more than 400 participants from Colombia, Spain, Lithuania, Mexico, Norway, the United Kingdom, and Sweden. Also, we had planned an experiential summer school in Bogota in July 2020, which had to be postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And for next November, the universities, we are planning to hold a meeting on universities' good practices for SDG 2. Next slide, please. Okay, so in addition to leading the proposal of the One Comprehensive Model for Agenda 2030 and bringing together internal stakeholders for its development, as Director of International Relations, I mainly contribute to the implementation of the partnerships and internationalization pillars of the model. In the internationalization pillar, 7 SDGs have been identified to which the International Office can contribute. These indicators refer mainly to the management of funding for the internationalization, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, global learning outcomes, international collaboration in sustainability, courses programs, institutional efforts to reduce the carbon footprint, results of participation in international projects, among others. These indicators are not yet a final version and will be validated as part of the process of formulating the next Institutional Development Plan 2022-2026. Next slide, please. Well, in a first approach to our internationalization and SDG indicators, I would like to highlight 2 points: the contributions to SDG 7, clean energy, and 13, climate action, and to SDG 17, partnerships for the goals, through which we contribute to other SDGs. For SDGs 7 and 13, the contribution from the International Office and its One Mobilized online program, which began in the 2nd semester of 2020 as an alternative to face-to-face mobility, is remarkable. In addition to the increase in the number of participants in both incoming and outgoing mobility from one semester to the next, the tons of CO2 avoided are also highlighted. In inbound mobility, the avoided carbon emissions increased by 6.25%. And as for outgoing mobility, the increase in avoided emissions was 38.3%. Online mobility becomes a modality to be preserved. In the last year, online mobility has been marked by the prevalence of women's participation. In semester 2022, in outgoing mobility, 56% of the participation corresponded to women, and in semester 2021, first semester, it increased by 40%. As for incoming mobility, in 2022, women represented 74% of the total, and in 2021, first semester, it continued to increase with 71%. In the One Mobilized online program, the one has offered 37 subjects with topics related to the global agenda and the sustainable development goals, and a total of 129 students have received this training in subjects such as sustainable construction, artificial intelligence, foundations of human rights, entrepreneurship and innovation, international cooperation for development, among other topics. Next slide, please. Okay. With regard to the SDG 17, this is where the International Office has the greatest opportunity to contribute to the SDGs. In the case of one, participation in global, regional, and national associations and networks has given one the possibility to be part of the global cluster, to have a voice in global publications on the SDGs, to one, students to participate in research internship programs with topics oriented to the SDGs, to participate in leadership platforms, to offer training and mobility opportunities at the postgraduate level, to lead inclusive internationalization processes, among many other results. This is how international cooperation has become a fundamental tool to contribute to the SDGs. One of the areas of work of the International Office is cooperation. It identifies grant opportunities, supports the formulation of projects, connects with potential partners, and directly implements some initiatives. Between 2019 and today, the International Office implements or supports 7 projects that in turn contribute to different SDGs. In total, these 7 projects add up to budgets of more than 2 million euros. And these projects work on issues such as migrant population integration, reducing violence in Latin America, sexual and gender rights perspective with the Venezuelan migrant population, entrepreneurship and women leadership, global competencies and community engagement. One of these projects is From Migration to Integration. The project aims to create a special program in which youth workers would include refugees in youth work and help them integrate in the society. We are 4 partners from Sweden, Myanmar, Kenya, and Colombia. One is the only university on this consortium. The other 3 partners are NGOs, a very interesting experience for one to work with 3 NGOs from different regions of the world, and particularly in this pandemic context. Well, next slide, please. Okay. So finally, I want to give some remarks. First, the SDGs have been an invitation to broaden perspectives on internationalization. COVID-19 has led to the dynamization of internationalization at home and collaborative online international learning co-op. Second, the relational capital and expertise of international offices or other units in the universities is a strategic tool for the 2030 agenda. Third, global learning, intercultural competencies, internationalization for society, and the diversity, inclusion, and equity approach are fundamental lines of development of an international office in line with the 2030 agenda. And fourth, positively impacting communities through the management of the internationalization and international cooperation is a challenge and a responsibility of the international higher education's leaders. So I will give it here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandra. A very comprehensive presentation and also a very interesting point of view. And we will see with the other speakers as well that the role of the international relations section of a university or department is of growing importance for the development of sustainable development, something that was not the case only a few years ago. So that will be an opportunity to get back to that. I must say that initially I was very intrigued by the acronym IZN, and I'm very pleased to see it was internationalization, but I thought it was even more of a complex concept there. So thank you, very, very nice. So I would like now to turn to travel to Europe and to the northern part of Europe in the University of Helsinki, and give the floor to Tom Beuling, who's the vice rector of the university. And we had the pleasure to meet in the past at your beautiful university. And unfortunately now it's online, but we will get back to that one day. Your portfolio is very rich. So between bilingual affairs, campus development, social responsibility, well-being of the university community, or even cooperation with the hospital district, as it says in your bio, is very comprehensive already, and also shows the many different dynamics of leadership and how that can indeed already resonate with the notion of a sustainable future. So the floor is yours, and thank you in advance for your contribution to the discussion here.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm looking forward to have a good discussion. Already Sandra gave a lot of things to discuss, and I think it's very good that we have a global view on this. As I represent the university from the Nordic welfare countries, where education is free, where healthcare is free, where we have ample of clean water. So some of the SDGs are quite, how should I say, we don't think of them as SDGs. They are our normal life here, so it's very important to have the global view on this. The next slide, please. I don't think we can find a university today who do not mention sustainability in their strategic plan. I think that's, how should I say, a must nowadays. But of course, the important thing is that you really get the words into action, and that I think is what I want to present in how we have been thinking about it, how to implement really sustainability so that each and everyone in our university, consisting of some 8,000 researchers and teachers and other staff, and 32,000 students. So we are a community of 40,000 persons, which is rather bigger than many towns in Finland. So we feel the responsibility and know that we have to be leaders in the society. But how to do it? The next slide, please. We decided that to make sustainability more, how should I say, easy to grasp also for university students and staff is to start with our own functions. Instead of just saying that here we have the 17 SDGs, because some of them might be rather far from your everyday life. But so we decided that what is the university, what is the role of the university in the society? Of course, research. And in that sense, we try to focus more and more on sustainability research, meaning also multidisciplinary functions. So out from the silos, out from the small organizations, thinking large. The second obvious thing is, of course, teaching our students, but also teaching the society. And just as an example, we have now an 5-credit sustainability program for all students. It is still, you don't have to do it, but we plan that it must be a part of everyone's exam when they graduate from our university. 3 of the credits are general, so for everybody, and then 2 of the credits will be focused on the field you study. So for instance, as a medical doctor, I'm interested to know what we are going to teach at the medical faculty for the medical students on sustainability, and that will be 2 credits. The third pillar is, of course, public engagement, how to get out, but also to remember that we have to listen to society. We are in a way not that different from many other big organizations, so we have to have a mutual understanding what happens. So that is a very important thing. And then, of course, the fourth one, which I think is what many students and teachers think, the daily operation, the daily functions at the campuses, at the university. How do we work? How do we promote sustainability? And so we think it's very important that we are open and welcoming. Everybody can participate in it. It will not function top down. if I as the vice rector said you have to do something on sustainability, that will not function. Unfortunately, the students are in fact those who demand that we do a lot, perhaps looking mostly on climate change and biodiversity, but realizing more and more that sustainability is something that is in everything we do at the university. The next one. And in fact, we managed to collaborate in Finland so that all the universities in Finland under our organization UNIFI worked out what we could call guidelines, or we were supposed to do a report on sharing best practices. But during the 2 years we worked, I was fortunate to have the chair. We really decided that we will be more bold and we will produce 12 theses for all universities to think on, to debate and to take note of. And I'm very happy that all our universities accepted this and have they now in their strategies. Of course, in different ways. So multidisciplinary universities have more of these, whereas just a technical university perhaps focuses on some other areas. But the 12 theses, we don't in any way want to compete with SDGs. They are all, the SDGs are the base for our theses. And our thesis then, as the house I showed a previous picture, we focus on research, on teaching, on our own functions and administration, our social interactions, but also think larger. What are the preconditions in society so that we really can be sustainable as universities? What should we demand from the government so that universities can even further strengthen sustainability? So just to take one example, which has to do with leadership. So the thesis number 6, the next slide, please. Just as a thesis, it's rather short and obvious, but in our paper we wrote the report. It's some 12 pages, I think, and it's freely downloadable from the net. And I really suggest that you read them. It's not very heavy, but it's very how should I say, strong statements when we start to look at them. So for instance, under thesis 6, we want all the universities in Finland to be carbon neutral until 2030. And that is a huge step to taking account that we are living far in the north, and in fact we have to heat our buildings, for instance. And to be carbon neutral in Finland is not that easy. Under thesis 6, we also say that the sustainability goals have to be implemented in all actions at the universities. So the headlines are general, but we then have under each thesis things that all universities should do. And I'm so happy that the universities really have taken this paper in use. But when we launched it in December, my fear was that this will be only a report which then will be forgotten. But fortunately, all universities have really taken this in account and are working on these. How do we do in Helsinki? The next slide, please. Once again, it cannot be top down and it cannot be a paper who steers it. So we are now working collaboratively at the universities to have our first real sustainability plan, a plan covering all our functions, all the 4 pillars, if you will, from the first picture. And in fact, today I have been leading a boot camp where we have students, leaders from different levels up to deans, discussing how are we going to do this, what are the next steps, what are we going to do this year, what next year, until 2030. So here I see that the collaboration is extremely important. And as the last slide, we have a slogan. The next one, please. That is how we wish that everybody thinks. Sustainability starts with me. You cannot outsource sustainability to a sustainability office at the university. Everybody has to be involved in it, and of course in collaboration. This was in short what I wanted to give us an appetizer for the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom Berling. This is very interesting, both in terms of a holistic approach to the Sustainable Development Goals at the institutional level, and then what you stress very strongly, this cooperation between the institutions in a country through UNIFI. And it would be really nice if in the chat you could also give the link to this strategy and the different thesis that you were alluding to, and we will certainly also add those together with other presentations when we will share the recording of this session after today. So it's very recent, December, and already taken up very strongly, even in a time of a pandemic, and that is very reassuring for the future as well. Without further ado, and because we will have an opportunity to discuss later, I would now like to turn to Professor Ioannis Giapintsakis from the University of Cyprus. Very pleased to welcome you to this session. And here again, you are the Vice Rector for Internationalization, International Relations, and as well you wear the hat of Vice Rector for Finance and Administration. And so here you embody actually the leadership role and how from your position you also contribute to developing the kind of sustainable university for the future. And your aim here is to also show how a university is a role model for itself, but also way beyond. And I give you the floor to listen to the presentation that you have prepared. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. Hello to everyone from Cyprus. I would like to thank IAU and UNICA for giving me the opportunity to be one of the panelists in this webinar and share with you the UCY story regarding this important issue of sustainability. My presentation today will focus on the actions our University of Cyprus, I would call it UCY, has taken towards promoting the SDGs, as well as the vision on the UCY leadership for the future. Next slide, please. Okay, so one of the UCY strategic targets in its strategic plan 2021-2025 is promote the sustainable development of the institution. Well, it is important to note here that UCY is a relatively young university, established only 30 years ago, back in '89. And for such a young university in a country without a particularly strong culture in the area of sustainability, our university has managed to make some progress. Its vision is to achieve even more so as to become an exemplar in the area of sustainability by becoming a role model for sustainable development in Cyprus through its future expansion and its day-to-day operation. Next slide, please. Okay, so at the moment, there is no coherent policy guiding UCY in its effort to place the SDGs in all its activities. Okay, rather, so far, there was a bottom-up approach whereby fragmented actions are taken by individual staff, academic departments, and administrative services. However, the UCY leadership has recognized that sustainability is cross-cutting and horizontal, and that a holistic approach is necessary. Therefore, it has recently set up a committee on sustainability, which is called to find the most suitable method to coordinate sustainable development and alignment with SDGs. Next slide, please. So, recognizing the need for a holistic approach, upon recommendation of the Committee on Sustainability, a working group is expected to be established, which will first of all map the existing situation with regards to the implementation of the SDGs at UCY, and enact policies to promote SDGs in all aspects of academic life. This working group will also have the responsibility of coordination our university's participation in the Times Higher Education Impact Rankings, and will facilitate collaboration with other international and national institutions through existing or new channels. Next. Okay. Well, as mentioned before, despite the lack of a solid organizational structure, UCY has had a number of success stories in the promotion of SDGs. One of these is the photovoltaics that were installed in 2015. At the time of installation, it was one of the biggest installations in Cyprus, and up to this day have generated 2.7 gigawatt hours of green energy. This amount of energy corresponds to about 6% of the campus annual needs. And our university, as you will see further in the presentation towards the end, has plans to develop a much higher installation to achieve its long-term energy goals. Next slide, please. Another success has been the implementation of the SAVES and SAVES2 projects, which support students to minimize their carbon footprint in their accommodation in the university dormitories by raising awareness about energy efficiency and by installing good sustainability habits, which hopefully will last beyond their time at the university. These campaigns run in 16 different universities across 7 European countries, and is a good example of SDG 17, which is about partnerships for the goals. And I should note that UNICA is also a partner in this project. Next slide, please. A lot of research related to SDGs is conducted at our university, and a number of research centers promoting SDGs have been established. Additionally, there are a number of student services in place which also promote SDG goals, such as SDG 10 and SDG 3. Next slide, please. UCY is also proud to be one of the members of the Young Universities for the Future of Europe Alliance. We call it UFE Alliance, for the development of a European university. One of the 4 UFE focus areas is sustainability, wide enough to ensure the fullest coverage of research and innovation topics, and fully in line with the number of SDGs, such as 3, 5, 9, 10, and 17. Next slide, please. Through UFE, UCY is also coordinating the UFERING project. It's UFE transforming research and innovation through Europe-wide knowledge transfer. Its overarching philosophy is to actively involve the whole surrounding ecosystem composed by citizens, businesses, and local government into its activities, for the mutually beneficial exchange of knowledge and resources in a context of partnership and reciprocity with concrete actions such as the inclusion of citizens in youth educational activities, the co-development and tackling of societal challenges, and so forth. All of the above are in line with SDGs 4, 11, and 13. Next slide, please. Also, in an effort to promote SDGs 5 and 10, and recognizing that people differ in their gender identity, sexual orientation, religion, nationality, age, marital status, language, health condition, physical disability, or socioeconomic background, our university has established the Diversity, Equality, and Inclusivity Office so as to create all necessary conditions for everyone to work and study on equal and fair terms. Next slide, please. So finally, UCY is very active in the promotion of SDG 17 since it has fostered very important strategic partnerships with international institutions. For example, UCY hosts on its premises the Confucius Institute and the Aula Cervantes Institute. It actively participates in the Erasmus Plus program, while it has signed around 250 agreements of cooperation with institutions both in Cyprus and abroad. Furthermore, UCY actively participates in university associations such as UNICA and IAU, through which it has formed strong bonds with international partners. Next slide, please. So we're coming to our future plans. UCY is planning the future with great enthusiasm. Through the experience it has gained so far, it expects to become a key player in the area of sustainability, not only Cyprus, but in the international higher education area. And so its future plans include, but of course are not limited, to developing a new 5 megawatt photovoltaic installation with energy storage, which will cover most of its energy needs. Ongoing installation of geothermal heat pumps, which is the biggest installation in Cyprus. Developing the medical school facility that will be the first leadership in energy and environmental design gold building in Cyprus, and also promote environmental sustainability through learning and teaching. Okay, that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Yes, thank you very much. Again, it is really fascinating to see how the Sustainable Development Goals, or the Agenda 2030 maybe, or even the broader strategic development of a sustainable development is linking up so many different aspects of a university. It is really a connecting point, something that brings people together and maybe even brings new meaning to things that we do in a university. At least that is what I hear in the 3 presentations so far. And I'm very pleased to now turn to Roger Petrie, who is professor of philosophy at Luther College and the University of Regina in the Department of Philosophy and Classics. So you come from a different angle into the discussion, definitely, but as well as a leader, because you're a coordinator of the United Nations University Regional Center of Expertise on Education for Sustainable Development in Saskatchewan, also linking up to many other dynamics there around the world. And we're very pleased to also see you, as was Sandra, an institutional lead in the IAU Global Cluster on Higher Education and Research for Sustainable Development, and they're leading on SDG 12, responsible consumption and production, already doing so much there from your end and connecting around the world. So I'm very pleased to give you the floor and to address a topic that forms part of this whole endeavor. You talk about risk, about uncertainty, and yet about how to mobilize the higher education community around those topics. So very pleased to give you the floor, Roger.
All right, well, good morning, afternoon, everybody. I'll just try showing my screen, see if that works. And get my slideshow going here. All right, well, thank you for that kind introduction, Hillage. And what I want to do is, first of all, I guess I need to provide a bit of welcome from my territory. Luther College is at the University of Regina in Saskatchewan, which is a prairie province of Western Canada. And as living in the prairies, I would like to acknowledge that Luther College is situated on Treaty 4 territory. So it's an important part of our culture to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples of this land, particularly the Cree, the Ojibwe, the Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, and Lakota peoples. And also this is the homeland of the Métis Nation. As Hillage has mentioned, I would like to begin by speaking to my own experience with two international organizations. One is the IAU Cluster on sustainable development, particularly my work with responsible consumption and production. And the second organization, RCE Saskatchewan, which includes the province's three largest post-secondary organizations, the University of Saskatchewan, the University of Regina, and Saskatchewan Polytechnic. So what I'd now like to do is just talk a bit about a general concept. I'm a philosopher, so maybe that's, I'm entitled to that, but I'd like to talk about the idea of uncertainty. And a book that came out fairly recently talks about differentiating risk from uncertainty. So the idea of risk is one that can be managed because the outcomes are known and their probabilities are known. Whereas with sustainability, we're typically dealing with uncertainty, all right, where we're not only unsure of the probabilities of certain outcomes, but a lot of the outcomes themselves are surprises. And so it's not a surprise that uncertainty is a feature of sustainable development, partly because we're looking into the long-term future, and so predictability is always a challenge. But partly because the core groups that sustainable development has historically worked for. If we think about dealing with poor and marginalized populations, future not yet existing generations, and also other species are not particularly well represented institutionally and economically in our systems. But I think also the fact that a lot of our current challenges are very surprising. So if we think of the pandemic, if we think of climate change, if we think of the instability a lot of our democratic systems are facing, all of that involves uncertainty. So the question is, well, how do you manage in a space of uncertainty rather than just risk? Because if we knew the probabilities, we can budget, allocate resources, and so on. But in the case of uncertainty, that is a bit problematic. And so one of the things that Ian Scroons talks about in his book is the idea that we need to focus on permanent adaptability and a shift in culture. And that shift in culture is a shift from control to one of care and solidarity. And I put the picture of Socrates up here because the idea of wisdom for Socrates is knowing what we do not know. And when we try to manage as though we're dealing with risks, when we're actually in an environment of uncertainty, we are claiming to know things that we don't actually know. And so how do we respond to uncertainty? Well, the key way, in my view, is building up our resources and capacities. So no matter what the future has to offer, we're able to mobilize resources in order to address them. And the UN Sustainable Development Goals, for me, are the tickets or the means by which we mobilize all 5 types of capital, whether it's human capital, natural capital, social, financial, or physical capital. So how are we doing that? Well, back in 2018, we ended up working with the International Association of Universities to build this global cluster on the Sustainable Development Goals. And the University of Regina and Luther College are focused on Sustainable Development Goal 12 on responsible consumption and production. And what's nice about the cluster is it by definition takes a whole institution approach because we are linking up whole universities together. Because we were focusing on responsible consumption and production, we used that as a way of defining or finding the universities we wanted to work with. So we ended up identifying sort of mid-sized universities where we thought we could collaborate with administration and faculty and students quite easily, comprehensive universities that had the full range of disciplines. We wanted universities with a strong rural-urban connection, and we also wanted to have ones that were historically well connected from a consumption and production perspective. So in terms of trade, in terms of culture, and so on. And so that has been very successful as we build linkages between those. With the RCE, the other linkage we're building is connecting our higher education partners in the region to our local sustainability issues. So that's partly a grassroots approach where we have a very lightweight structure that ends up mobilizing local practitioners and experts within the community, connecting them with our faculty members and students in order to transform sustainable livelihoods in the region. Another thing I then want to talk a bit about is how not only do we mobilize social capital, but how do we mobilize human capacities. And the University of Regina just went through a strategic planning process that was approved in 2020. But what was fascinating about it from my perspective was that it was volunteer-led, all right? The team leading that was made up of faculty, students, staff, alumni, and it ended up mobilizing over 1,300 individuals through a variety of very open processes, town halls, focus groups, other forms of consultation. What then happened was we identified 5 strategic priority areas that came from the ground up, but then we used the Sustainable Development Goals to make sure we weren't missing anything, that there weren't any gaps. And so we had a very nice connection between the global and the local. Now, as part of the implementation strategy, we're using that process again with 7 different working groups to develop our strategic sustainability plan. In terms of physical capital, how have we been mobilizing that? Well, the key idea here is to move to a campus sort of self-sufficiency model, trying to create sort of a sharing economy on campuses. And so in this case, we've had a long history of working with open educational resources as a campus, which really gets at the production and consumption of scholarly resources. So open textbooks, but also the course materials that go with that in terms of slides and research videos and so on, while still maintaining quality peer review processes. We had a print optimization project on campus, which significantly reduced our printers. So there's the printing press, moving from over 1,100 printers on campus to now just around 300, and of course phasing that out as we move more electronically. But that saved us about $4.3 million over 10 years, so that was not insubstantial. and of course, looking at how we can now share other resources. If we think of natural capital or our natural resources, again, we're trying to shift the culture, right? That's the challenge. How do you shift the culture? Well, in our case, we have significant water issues on the prairies. Particularly, we have fairly weak policies from a provincial government level, and farmers are draining our wetlands to put more land into production. And so we needed to figure out, well, how do we educate our farmers to say, no, preserving the wetlands is an important part of that. Part of what we did was have a webinar series, and in this case, the webinar drew on our Indigenous perspectives, seeing water as having intrinsic value, and also showing that the wetlands were an important part of good agricultural production processes. What's nice, in Saskatchewan, we have a public policy institute that is shared between the University of Saskatchewan and the University of Regina. And because we use that as a vehicle, the learnings from this conference went directly into our provincial government and have triggered a lot of really good work since then. A few final thoughts. I think one of the things, if you want a whole institutional cultural approach, where you're dealing with uncertainty and trying to share resources, is you just have to try things. So I've always liked Professor Jeffrey Scott talked about ready, fire, aim. It's by trying things that you discover the parameters in which that we don't know with uncertainty. Starting small in a whole bunch of different areas is really quite critical to build trust and have small successes. Deep listening to find common areas of interest for collaboration. Using the Sustainable Development Goals for questioning, right? That's the key thing philosophically. Anything that we're doing as a university, we should use the list of the 17 goals to question, mobilize, and find basis for agreement. Sustainable development should be fun. If we're doing this over the long term, it can't just be due to a sense of fear or of the future, but rather an excitement about the future. So celebrating successes, being very flexible in your approaches to capitalize on emerging opportunities, because not everything that's uncertain is necessarily bad. We'll just have a lot of interesting surprises. And finally, the idea takes a whole university, right? The idea, it takes a whole village to raise a child. From my perspective, it will take the whole university, all different disciplines, because we don't know where the knowledge that is needed in a system of uncertainty is going to come from within the university. And so we need to think about how we can mobilize the whole university for moving the planet to new forms of sustainable consumption and production. So thank you for that, and I will stop my sharing here.
Oh, this is a wonderful conclusion of 4 without being a conclusion, and yet rather opening new questions. And maybe since I do not see too many questions in the Q&R, I will also invite Luciano to come in, or Isabel Toman, who's been very active behind the scenes to organize this, or Vicky Tsonka from UNICA, to ask questions, because your presentations are so rich that they will trigger a lot of further debate. Maybe I could start with you, Roger, and ask if this notion of uncertainty is something that your co-panelists see as a trigger for transformation within the institution as well, because it's a reverse question almost. There is a saying for that, but it's almost as if you take the topic reverse. And I very much like your last points that match those theses of Tom and certain the graph by Sandra in the beginning, and the different plans that Yanis was presenting. So maybe be ready, fire and aim. Let's go and see if Tom, how would you react actually to this, or how do you react to this presentation? And then we will have a rotation among you to see how you would react to maybe also the other presentations here today. So Tom, if I may start with you.
Yes, of course, and I really applaud the presentation, because I completely agree. I think the pandemic has shown us that when we get a crisis, first of all, it was a virological crisis, something to do with my profession, medical. But when you start to look, it implements and has effects on all our disciplines. So it's cultural, it's social, it's everything. So we have to be prepared that we cannot have the answers in beforehand before we know the crisis which will come. So we have to accept that kind of uncertainty. But on the same hand, I think that it's important that our universities get more flexible, because the changes are faster nowadays. We cannot live as when Helsinki University was born 380 years ago. Everything was rather much slower. So yes, some uncertainty, but at the same time, be prepared and be open-minded. And there was a question also in the Q&A, and I think you answered so elegantly to that, how to engage humanities and arts in sustainability. So exactly like that, we all are needed. We don't know what problems we will face.
Oh, indeed. Well, thank you. That's a first very good reaction. And I now go and turn to Sandra. How do you relate to the other three presentations here today? As there are there's a red line, and yet there are different approaches. So also interesting to see how this triggers new ideas from your end.
All the presentations were wonderful, and wow, that element of uncertainty, I think, is fundamental. And what I wanted to present today was how the international offices has changed because the SDGs, but then not only because the SDGs, because the COVID-19. And suddenly we had to think in a different way, to think how to really use the technology, how to collaborate from home, and how to make internationalization possible even in lockdown. Now it has been 15 months without going to the university. And well, I mentioned that we are planning our next institutional plan, but I'm sure that in the middle of that plan, we have many elements that we don't really know. So what we need is to be open, to be prepared to respond to new challenges. And well, international collaboration is a very important point for that necessity of be open-minded.
Yes. Yanis, how would you like to react to the other presentations, maybe highlighting some of the points you made and connect them?
Yes. Well, when we started to build our strategic plan 2021-2025, we named it Response to Challenges, and then the pandemic came. So I agree with Professor Petri that there is a lot of uncertainty in our world, and being a physicist, I understand the concept very well. We need to respond to different challenges as they come. We should not be fixed on things. We should listen to everybody. Like Professor Bolling said, everybody has to contribute. There is no, this is not an issue that one person can solve. Everybody has to contribute to this. We need to mobilize the universities. People at the university should learn how to deal with the issue of sustainability. And that means that we should use research. We should implement this concept of sustainability in all learning and teaching. Of course, the leadership of the universities has to be there in order to collect all these ideas and make a cohesive plan for the future, which, of course, needs to be readjusted. We cannot be fixed, as I said. So
Yeah.
We have many common things in our presentations. I mean, we all think the same way.
Yeah, you do, but from different angles, and that's what makes it so rich. What is also fascinating, we have two of the members of the IAU from leading on SDG 4 with us today. I saw Chuck Hopkins and Catherine Cole, who lead on SDG 4, and they're at the University of York. They organized in January an international conference on this link between internationalization and sustainable development. Maybe Catherine and Chuck, listening in, you can put a link to that in the chat, because people may pick it up. Because there as well, there are some of the things that all of the speakers picked up, and where there is a resonance with that. And there was a statement out of that conference that the IAU also supported, and where we saw many of you take part. So maybe we could also connect these events between each other. Thank you, Catherine, I see it there. So what I see is this dynamic of, and the wish to also safeguard the value and the vision and mission of a university where it stands, and with the disciplines and with their resonance, also with the scientific fields, and at the same time, this dynamic of a more comprehensive approach to the issues we face. There must be challenges there, and I will call it challenges with opportunities to match it. But these challenges, what would you see as the most difficult for those leaders being with us today when you start implementing any kind of engagement strategy with sustainable development? Because universities have stepped up their action, but not all have been able to do it so far. So you gave different recipes, different insights, different practices, but maybe you could highlight one of the biggest challenges you met at the beginning. And there, I'll start with you, Roger.
Well, thank you for that. It's a challenging question. So I think universities have to show courage. Just as in our traditional research, our goal, going back to Aristotle, that we focus on the best questions, all right? Now, when we're talking about sustainable development, the idea is, from a sustainable consumption and production perspective, we need to focus on the best patterns of production and consumption, whether or not our regions have traditionally engaged in those. So oftentimes universities are being asked to serve the existing order. And what we know about that existing order is it's not particularly sustainable. And in a way, the kinds of things we need have to be quite radical to meet our climate change targets and so on. So that's why the university needs to see itself, particularly in terms of its own production and consumption, as an autonomous thing, build up resources so that it can have the independence in order to pursue those more radical pathways, but also recognizing that there are members of the community who want to make those shifts, and seeing them as scholars, right? Extending our identity of what is a scholar to members of our community as a living laboratory and as part of the university. So that, for me, is the challenge, is universities, we need to be bold, and we need to not be beholden to other interests, because people are counting on us to pursue the best pathways. Even if those are challenging, even those are upsetting, if they are the best pathways, that's what we should be doing.
Yeah. But I hear often also when people turn to the International Association of Universities on the how-to, I say, there's still the question, but is this not an enormous new addition to the kind of work that we do already? Is that not also one of the challenges, that you have to convince the different stakeholders within a university that this is maybe an add-on, but also a facilitator somehow? And how do you see this in terms of the, well, maybe linked to a potential challenge you may have seen? Sandra, may I turn to you?
Yes, I agree with you. It's not really different work, but what I find most challenging is to connect the administrative, some administrative offices. An example, the accounting office. Before, they thought maybe they didn't know the concept of SDGs. And then when we invited to them to know about the Agenda 2030 and to explain how they can contribute from their office, they realized that they have a role and they can contribute. So it's quite difficult at the beginning, but bit by bit, they have been engaged on this strategy of SDGs. But what I saw is that they used to think that these big strategies were responsibility of the main, the leadership, the high leadership. But now they know that at their level, they can contribute. And I really agree with Tom when he said, this is for all. This is a responsibility of each of us.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. So you talked about the administrative. So Yanis, you wear different hats. Also the Vice Rector for Administrative and Finances. Is that a department that got involved heavily in facilitating the transition towards this sustainability university and as a role model for way beyond the university limits?
Yes, most of our administrative services are involved in this sustainable future. For example, the International Student Office is working very hard, and actually I'm here because of them, because of the internationalization that we want to be involved in. As I said, we have many agreements with several organizations within Cyprus and outside Cyprus. Also, the technical services in our university are highly involved in this issue. As I presented before, we're in the midst of building a new 5 megawatt photovoltaics park, which will cover more than 60% of our energy needs. We have geothermal installations. We also try to use research for this issue. We have strategically founded several research centers. One is focused on water, another one on renewable energies, another one in critical telecommunications and technology issues. So the university here, the University of Cyprus, is trying to address this issue involving both academics and administrators. And the leadership right now is just trying to coordinate the whole project. Of course, in this, the students are involved through their participation in research projects and also through the teaching courses that we're offering.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Tom, I get to you with a slightly different question, maybe that can resonate with others as well. You're the leader you're leading the movement, and you're the leader of the institution, and you're also the leader in the UNIFI work, so there as well to really bring people together. What is the relationship of your university also with outside players and, for instance, with governments, the advocacy part, to really show that universities have a key role to play in Agenda 2030, which was not the case when the agenda was adopted and the SDGs, and hence the universities came a little bit later into the whole process. But today they can easily engage, or more easily engage with it. How do you see also this role of the leader to also bring this to the attention of the broader public, and especially also of the leaders of a nation?
Yes, that's an extremely important role of the universities, of course. I don't know how it is in the other countries represented here, but our universities get our main funding from the government. We are, though, rather autonomous, but still we get our funding. So we have much direct connections with the government, discussing the finance models, and that is a way where we think that we can discuss with the government that please take sustainability as an ingredient in the financing model for the universities and for research. Of course, there is then one small risk, is academic freedom at risk. If we start to put more resources on sustainability research and it's somebody being left out, and that I see as a small risk. So there we have to do, as Roger also told, that all research is important because we don't know what questions we will have after 10 years. But of course, we are going to canalize more and more funds for research, somehow dealing with sustainability. But yes, our role is extremely important, and then the other role is, of course, to have research-based information for the society, and in that we are not so good in Finland yet. We are not very good at communicating with people who have not academic education, and I think we have an immense role there. I mean, fake news and the journalists and so on, and if universities cannot tell what is important, then I don't think anybody can do it. So there we have to put much more strengths, at least in our country.
Yeah, I think this resonates. I now saw the question by Chuck in the discussion to Tom. Did the government approach the universities of Finland to collaborate, or did the universities offer to collaborate? How do we build the voice of universities in formulating a national strategy? So I think you touched on those. Do you want to say one more word, or shall I pass the word on?
Well, I can just answer. The university started this process, and then we invited the government, come with us. And in fact, we also invited the student organizations. So we had the students, the university leaderships. We started this process, and then we asked specialists from the government, come and discuss with us. How do you see it? This is how we see it. So it has been a communication both sides from the very beginning.
Yeah, well, I can adapt this question. We've been invited to be adaptable, no? So to Roger, did the government approach the universities of Saskatchewan to collaborate, or did the universities offer? Can you maybe take that same question?
Yeah, I think the universities have been leading with our regional center of expertise going back to 2007. We needed a critical mass of scholarship. So that meant not seeing each other as competitors, but as collaborators for the future of the province. And that shift was really important because we all compete for resources, but sustainable development is about creating new resources for everybody. And I think part of the benefit of then the universities collaborating and then discovering who in the community was already working on these issues and seeing them on the same level as the universities, and including our polytechnics in a very egalitarian kind of a way. Once we ended up working with the community, all of a sudden, I think the provincial government also takes it quite a bit more seriously because, of course, those communities elect politicians, and those communities all saw the university as an ally in terms of legitimizing their concerns. And on the campus, the communities legitimize the faculty members' interest in sustainable development for the larger administrative bodies. So I think it has been the universities that have been leading. Particular challenge in a place like Canada where it's a federal state and each province has the responsibility for education separately. That means you really need your local university working with your local government.
Yeah, very interesting. So thanks, Chuck. I will adapt again. Dear Sandra, did the government approach the universities in Colombia? And your case is special because your university is of a different nature as well. And so how do you see this collaboration together with the government or against the government, but not in the wrong sense, but to try and change it? Or did the university offer, and how does that work? So maybe you could.
Well, in Colombia, we universities offer the support, and we do it through our Colombian Association of Universities. So in that association, we have public and private universities, And in terms of sustainable development, we are actually working on the same way of the cluster. So we have there 17 groups, and we are working together between different universities. And these working groups give to the government some recommendations for sustainability. And well, I'm not really sure if it will be used or not, but at least we feel that we are contributing in some way.
Okay, very interesting. We see already there's more coming in the chat. We have examples from La Sapienza in Italy. We have a colleague from Western Caspian University in Baku in Azerbaijan, also wishing to work more on these topics, and probably also with you. So this is starting a ball to roll even further. Yanis, if I can turn to you and adapt the same question. So in Cyprus, how do you see this cooperation between governments and universities?
Well, as I said, unfortunately, there is not such a strong culture of in the area of sustainability in Cyprus. So it is our vision to become a role model for sustainable development through our day-to-day operations and also future expansions. So the government has been helping us a lot. It has funded several projects, as I said, the photovoltaic park, the different research centers. So yes, we go hand in hand, and we are trying to show the example.
Yeah, very interesting. And also because we work with UNICA, the universities in capital cities, the University of Helsinki, the University of Cyprus, you're also in a capital city. So does that also impact on the way that you actually engage with the sustainable development goals, would you say? Tom, maybe?
Well, at least we have most connection to government, I think, of the universities in Finland. So, I mean, I meet one or two ministers every now and then on my field. So yes, I think that the capital universities have a special role. We are obviously also the biggest university in Finland. I think that most of the universities which are in the capitals are big multidisciplinary universities. So it's in a way a natural thing. But still, I would like to emphasize that our sustainability work in Finland is really collaborative between the universities, which is a bit new thing. We often compete on funds and on students and who is the biggest and most beautiful one. But here we really found something common. And for instance, we will have every year a meeting open for both students and teachers to discuss sustainability. The next one will be in November, 2-day meeting. So this is a common thing for us.
Yeah, that's very nice. That's also this shift to collaboration that you underlined very strongly, Roger, in your latest intervention. Would you wish to elaborate on that? This move, do you think this is something there to stay in the future post-COVID as well? This shift from competition to collaboration, despite the environment in which universities are to thrive?
I think from a production and consumption perspective, it's a shift to volunteerism as a way of doing things. And when you do things with volunteerism, the value, of course, is as many people participating as they can. So a competitive paradigm doesn't really work, whereas a volunteer model does. And so, for example, our regional center on education for sustainable development is completely voluntary. We aren't even incorporated. We're not a legal entity. When we do things, different partners, for example, will hold the money for different events and so on. And it's very much seen as a collaboration. Our IAU project, again, each university sort of stepped up. They were excited to participate. They were curious. Curiosity is at the root of universities, and And volunteerism, in a way, is the newest production system, right? We've had markets for quite a long time, and business and all of that, and competition. But now volunteerism is really the cutting edge way, I think, of doing scholarship in grounded, place-based methods and so on, and in terms of organizing. So that's where it is. There's room for competition too, but that's once the resources have arrived. You can't compete on what doesn't exist and where you don't have any of the parameters. So
would you say, maybe all of you as well, that the role of universities, the stepping up of the voice of students in universities, is also contributing to this shift somehow? Maybe Sandra, would you like to pick up on that? Do you see the students as driving force as well to move to a different kind of model?
Yes, definitely. And well, in Colombia, we are seeing that. Well, I don't know if you know, but we are in this moment in the middle of a big social complicated situation, and the students, of course, are part of this movement. And what have been very interesting is that the Colombian Association of Universities have been a platform for the students, for bringing together the voices of the students around the country and give the Colombians the message of them. So definitely we now need to hear more and more the proposals and the ideas and, well, the projects for a new country. And of course, from universities, we need to be in the same way.
So that's nice because it aligns nicely with many of the values that UNICA and IAU uphold, this collaboration as well, this networking. We're unfortunately close to the end, whereas I would have seen many more opportunities to exchange further. Unless Luciano or Vicky or Isabel, you have another question, I would like to do a quick round and invite each of you as speakers to maybe give one takeaway from this session. So I put you on the spot, yes, but I hope you don't mind, and I will start with Yanis.
Okay, the main message here is that the sustainability issue is not a matter of one person. Everybody has to deal with it. It's a global issue, and through collaboration between the universities, exchanging good practices will help solve this or make an improvement on this issue.
Thank you. Tom?
Well, I could perhaps take my slogan from the last slide. Sustainability starts with me in collaboration. Just as my colleague from Cyprus, everybody has to be involved, but really the mindset that I can do something which makes it more easy. And the second one perhaps is then that in fact, I think the students are a driving force. They want us to do even faster and even more. So have students on board when you do decisions.
Very nice. Roger?
Yeah, I think the importance of building collaborative structures that everybody's talked about today as a way of changing the culture, because once you create a culture of sharing and cooperation between universities and on a campus that includes everybody, then everybody will participate. But getting at that deeper cultural level, which means, again, listening to parts of the university that have to deal with culture. So the social sciences, humanities are actually critical if you actually want a highly participatory structure.
Yeah, wonderful. And I liked your picture of the stairs with on each of the stairs, the SDGs and the way you climb up you co-construct along the way because you bring everybody up the stairs. It's a very nice picture as well there. Sandra, one word, and then Luciano, you will have the closing words if you please. Sandra.
Well, working together on the SDGs is a key for peace, social justice, tolerance, respect, and maybe we don't need to think in other things in these difficult moments in Colombia. Actually, the solution can be just to take the SDGs, the indicators are going together for that. So we have the roadmap, and we need to now listen to each other.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of, again, the symbolics of the birds behind you in all those colors. So the different voices, the different perspectives, the need to connect regularly, to also be able to translate. Nothing is just to be applied anywhere in one and a simple way, but to always adapt, but to learn and get new inspiration from where we come from is the beauty of such kinds of encounters. So on my behalf, I would like to very warmly thank all four excellent speakers for your really bright presentations. I'd like to thank Vicky Tsonka for helping facilitate, Isabel Thoman for all the prep work, and you can maybe show your picture and open the cameras. And thank you, Luciano. The final words is yours.
Thank you very much, Ilige. I will just echo you in thanking very much all the speakers for the excellent presentations, and Vicky and Isabel for all the work for the preparation, etc. And you for chairing so well this panel. Has been really very, very interesting. And I mean, to close, just a comment from me. What I see, at least in UNICA in Europe, that really there is a growing interest for this topic, which is very good. I mean, in the last 10 years has been really increasing at the level of the leadership, at the level of the management, and definitely at the level of the students. Students are very much engaged. What I see as a challenge, one challenge is that not always all 17 SDGs are taken in consideration at the same level. Sometimes we focus more on some, compared to others, and I think sometimes, especially in this COVID crisis, we saw that actually there were maybe some areas of this theme which was a bit neglected, and in particular health probably was not in the radar, I think, of all universities like it should be, I think, in the future. And another challenge is that, of course, the leadership of universities is more and more busy. We can see in Europe there are networks like IAU and UNICA and others, but there are many other activities which actually make difficult, I think, for some people to be engaged as they wish. So I think it's very good to partner, to work together. I think this today this webinar is a good example in that can really show how two different organizations can work together with the same goal and organize an event like this. So again, thanks a lot again to IAU, to Ilige, and I really wish to all of us to continue to work together.
Yes, thank you so much. And the recordings will be made available online on both the UNICA and the IAU websites. You're more than welcome to share, any of you, the participants or the speakers, as I believe there is a lot of food for further thought in your presentations, and people will wish to also go back to your slides. So if you agree, we would make those available also in a comprehensive set, because there is a lot that people can pick up and dialogue with. So thank you so much, and see you next time for a next dialogue on issues related to these.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a very nice day or evening.